Hi, I'm Terrell Turner, the host of the Law and Finance Show. And today we have a great guest on because, one of the things about, that I realized with talking to a lot of family law attorneys and family law practices is that, you're not just there to help your client navigate only the legal side. Your client is going through a ton of life changes. It is probably one of the crappiest experiences that they're going to navigate, as according to many people I've talked to that have gone through a divorce. And one of those areas that becomes very, very critical is, what are my finances going to look like as I navigate this? Or how do I navigate this financially? Like, what does this mean? So today I have a great guest on, and we're going to talk about a new awesome product, the Divorce Money Guide. So stay tuned for more in this episode. So let me bring on my guest, Tracey Coenen. Welcome to the show, Tracy.
Thanks for having me. How are you?
I am great. I am excited to have you on because when I saw the tag, it was a post I saw on LinkedIn about the Divorce Money Guide. I was like, this has to be interesting. So I have been looking forward to having you on the show.
Me too. It took us a little bit to get it scheduled, but I'm glad to be here because I think that, when you're talking about these financial issues that are coming up in divorces, I think I've got something new and innovative to add to that space that can really help the clients. So it's exciting to me to be able to talk about it.
Absolutely. Now, before we jump into the details of that, want to learn a little bit about your background. So can you tell us a little bit about, kind of your background and how the Divorce Money Guide even popped up as an idea for you?
Sure. I've been a forensic accountant for more than 25 years. So I've been a solo practitioner for the last 22 years. And about a third of my practice is in the divorce space. So I like to say, as a forensic accountant, I find money. So I do a lot of fraud investigations, executives stealing money, all sorts of money shenanigans, brothers and sisters fighting over mom and dad's money when someone passes away, or contracts gone bad between businesses and they need to figure out who lost money and how much, all that kind of good stuff. But like I said, about a third of it is in the divorce space. And the thing is that forensic accounting in divorce is expensive. And so I think, probably 90 to 95% of people getting divorced cannot afford it. But if they have suspicions about the money, what do? They've been left to kind of fend for themselves. Their divorce attorney, if they don't have money for a forensic accountant, the divorce attorney probably has to say, well, I'm sorry, there's nothing we can really do about this unless we could get some expert help. So one day back in February, I said, there's got to be something we can do about this. And I came up with the Divorce Money Guide, kind of a do-it-yourself forensic accounting process, guide, handbook, but with a little bit of expert help along the way. That expert being me, of course.
That's one of the things I think is a very important topic that, I've even had a conversation. You and I were talking before, we went into hitting record on the show. But one of the things that I had a conversation with some family law, attorneys, and that was one of the things that they talked about is that, a lot of times when it comes down to that, they're trained in the legal side. Their client has tremendous concerns about, the finances. Are things getting sorted out properly? What's going to happen to their finances? And they're just so clueless on it, and they just don't have any resources to really say, hey, here's a good resource to help us navigate or provide more clarity around what's going on there. So, I'm curious for you as you started, thinking about, the idea of the Divorce Money Guide, what was some of the initial responses when you started sharing the idea about what it is?
So I first started talking to family lawyers, right? Because they are right there in the thick of it with the clients. I said, I've got this idea. There's nothing on the market like it to help people in the process of divorce sort out their money. And let's set the issue of fraud aside. Maybe you don't even have concerns about your spouse hiding money or spending it inappropriately, but maybe you are just the spouse who hasn't been actively involved in managing your family's money. Where would you even start? Money is intimidating. Numbers are intimidating. And so I wanted to make something that would help them kind of get on some firm footing with the financial issues. And so I brought this to family lawyers and I talked to 20 attorneys, and every single one of them said, "Oh my God, I would recommend this to all my clients. This is such a great idea. I don't know how you're going to execute it, but I can't wait to see it." So I got super feedback from attorneys. I also talked to CPAs and other fraud investigators and said, "What do you think about this concept?" Hands down, everyone liked the concept. Nobody knew how I would possibly execute it, right?
One of the things, I laugh because, I think going from idea to execution it's always a very interesting process. So I'm curious as to how you started kind of navigating that journey. And I say journey intentionally because from what I've experienced, even in my own firm, it's just like execution is not something you just say, "Hey, here's a plan, we're gonna go do it." You do it and it works. It's just like, oh no, there's some hills, there's some twists, there's some turns. So what's been helping you kind of navigate that process as you're figuring out the next step of, execution?
Well, Terrell, the important thing for me was to actually bring a product to market. So I immediately started talking to people about how do I create a product? How do I market it? How do I launch it? How do I do all these things? And one of the themes that kept coming up was people telling me, just get something on the market. Too many people want to make it perfect, or they spend too much time thinking about it, not enough time doing. You want to make sure that a product actually happens. And so I had a completed product 83 days after I had the brainstorm for it. So that was pretty exciting to me. I just wanted to just crush it with that. But for me, it was about staying organized and staying focused. So for example, I use Asana to manage all of my projects. And so that was super critical here, especially doing something I had never done in my business before, creating a product. I was able to purchase a template that a product creator had put together to help me sort of understand all the pieces that needed to go into the product. And so then I would give myself deadlines on individual tasks to complete within the product. So it was part of it that was easy was this product has 10 steps to it. And so, for each step, there are like 3 critical things that have to be completed for each one for me to complete. And so that's a pretty organized way to check off what you've done in creating that product.
Now that seems like an interesting, process because a lot of times, when I talk to lawyers or lawyers that we're working with, they're trying to figure out, okay, all right, one is how do we get a process for making what we do better or actually making it more efficient? And while working through that process, they still have to support clients and they still have to actually run the work of their business. So I guess as you were kind of working through this execution process, were you still in the process of working with clients and still working in the business?
Sure. So 2 full-time jobs since the end of February is basically what I've been doing because I still have all of my consulting clients and I do a lot of consulting and I didn't want to shortchange any clients. I didn't want to stop accepting projects because, this new business with the divorce money guide and the future money guides obviously is going to take a while to develop volume, get name recognition out there and get a steady stream of income. So I certainly couldn't let my consulting work go. So again, using Asana for those projects at the same time was super helpful because it helped me make sure that nothing fell through the cracks.
Awesome, awesome. So I want to talk a little bit about, and we'll come back to the divorce money guide. But I want to talk a little bit about kind of the consulting work. Can you give us a little bit more of an idea, kind of what type of consulting, and who's kind of your ideal clients that you work with?
So my clients are the attorneys, and they are either working in a litigation context or in family law. And I am working on fraud investigations or other litigation matters that involve complicated financial scenarios. So, I've been a solo for a long time, as I mentioned before, and the kinds of cases that I work on are the ones where the attorney wants to know who's doing the work. So I say, what you see is what you get. I'm all for the team concept, but in my firm, it's really just me with a little bit of support on the side because I'm working on more complex cases and I want to be responsible for those numbers and I want to testify well if we ever get to court.
Mhm. Gotcha, gotcha. That's something that I think is very interesting as well, because what I find is that a lot of lawyers are kind of feeling that sense of a debate about, do I just hire a bunch of people and expand that way, pull myself out of the work, or do I stay in work because they really enjoy doing the work? And it's just like they live through kind of this debate, and you seem to have reached a place where you're comfortable with the approach that you're taking. Like, was there something that helped you, or were there some conversations or just some introspection that you did to get you comfortable with, hey, you know what? This is how I'm going to approach it. I want to still do it.
Back in the early years when I first started my firm, the first 3 or 4 years, I had the firm concept and I wanted to build that team because that's what everyone did. And I made my first few hires, and none of them were quite right for the firm. But through the process of working with them, I also realized that I didn't want to manage people. I don't want to manage a team. People say, oh, you could make more money if you have a team and, bill for their time and all the things. That's not how I choose to make money. First of all, I don't bill for time. I use fixed fees. But second of all, I also know how expensive it is to have a firm, that there's overhead and you have to, you continue to pay someone's paycheck whether or not they're productive in the business. And, there's a lot of responsibility that goes along with that I just didn't care for. And so after having those few employees and them not working out and eventually going away, I realized, you know what, I don't want a team anyway. I'm just going to do what I do well. And so being a solo, it's easy to have your attention pulled in a lot of different directions, right? And so I did things to make sure that I was doing business the way I wanted to. So no hourly billings. I do fixed fees, makes it super easy. At the beginning of a project, here's what your fee is. Please send me the money as a deposit and then I'll get started. So I'm not dealing with sending out bills, following up on accounts receivable, things like that. So as there were tasks with running a firm that I didn't like, I changed how I did business to eliminate those tasks.
Awesome. I love it. I love it. Now, you bring up fixed fees, because that is a growing topic that I'm seeing with a lot of lawyers. And I think lawyers probably very similar to my industry of accounting and finance professionals of, the hourly rate was just the way of life. And now that, maybe several years ago, people started looking at, hey, fixed fees, which make a lot of sense to consumers, because then they're kind of have a little bit more expectation about, hey, how much is this going to cost? So, for yourself, I mean, in coming up with fixed fees, did you end up doing like a ton of calculations or studies, or like trying to just figure it out? Or did you kind of take a more of a, hey, we'll test and kind of evolve and evaluate along the way?
As I started out doing fixed fees, it was nothing more than how long do I think this case is going to take me times an acceptable hourly rate. And that was just the number I used. But as time went on, I was able to, I guess, come up with a value for tasks that wasn't necessarily based on time. And over the years, I've developed systems and processes. And, I hired a developer to create some specialized software that would help me do certain pieces of investigations in a more automated fashion. And so, of course, I couldn't bill for time for the things that software is doing for me, right? Because it's doing some things instantaneously. But I know the value of that piece of the project to the overall project. And so as time went on, I sort of come up with what I call my secret spreadsheet, where I have, all the inputs to a project, the different types of analyses that I might need to do, where I'm, okay, so it's this kind of analysis on it's a tax returns that I have to look at. How many tax returns are there? How complicated are they? And what level of analysis am I doing on them? Am I just looking at them kind of for a very high level view of what's been going on? Or is there a specific detailed analysis that I need to do within that tax return? And all those variables go in and then it kicks out a number for that part of the project.
Awesome. Awesome. I absolutely love that. I think, and I found that to be a very similar thing of most people usually kind of do hey, I think it's going to take this long, hourly rate. Hey, here's what the fee is. And over time, I think they start to see, take the more the value approach. Now, I guess question for you on that is, with taking the more value approach, do you feel like that's led you to focus more on the things that actually drive value for the client as opposed to just the amount of time you spend doing the work?
Oh, for sure. So I'm always making recommendations to the clients about which analysis we should or shouldn't do. And I know that some forensic accountants don't want to say, do this, don't do that. Well, what if that creates liability? What if we miss something? But I really feel like my clients are hiring me for my expertise and my recommendations. So I say to them, here are all the things that we could do on this project, but here's where I think that we're going to get the biggest bang for our buck. And so I would start here with these things. And if we find a bunch of stuff there, we could always expand our analysis, right?
Awesome. I love it. I love it. So now I want to go back to the divorce money guide. And, now that, you've had, you started back in February of just, hey, a full-time, two full-time jobs of just really figuring this out. Plus, I mean, you got your own life you got to deal with. And so one of the things that I'm curious is as people have gotten introduced to it and you kind of, told them about what it is, you kind of introduce them to what it is, have you gotten much feedback from people who have actually started using the guide? And what's been some of their feedback?
So I had some beta testers before it rolled out, and I've gotten feedback from the people who've bought it and have used it. And hands down, everyone's saying it's super easy, super, super easy. So what I didn't realize when I started this was that people were going to say, I don't understand what it is. Like I have people all the time saying to me, hey, how's your book doing? Not a book. It is not a book. It is an online handbook that uses videos, written materials, worksheets, checklists. And so any way that you learn, you can get the material out of it. It takes you, there are 10 steps that you can go through in order, or guess what? You don't have to go through them in order. You can pick and choose. But what people have found is that it has been super easy, even for people who aren't good with numbers. And so two of my beta testers, I think, would not be offended if I called them numbers dummies, because they've called themselves that. And they were able to navigate through it and get some really actionable results that they could use in their divorce. They got some really great information about where their husbands had been spending money that was inappropriate so that they could further pursue that issue and, get that money back in the process of divorce.
Awesome. Awesome. And I think that is a very important, very helpful tool because as I say on like many of the shows that we do is that money is a very emotional process. And sometimes you do need that helpful guide to help you navigate, this emotional process of money so that you have more clarity about that game plan. So I absolutely love the idea of what you're doing. So if people are interested in learning more about you, your firm, learning more about the divorce money guide, where can they find you online?
They can find me at divorcemoneyguide.com. Or if they're into Instagram, they could find me there also at Divorce Money Guide. And of course, look me up on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Awesome. And I see from the website, I mean, there's so many places where you're showing up and you're talking about this. And that is awesome. And I must say, I'll go back to the top because I must say, I really like the leather jacket. That looks super cool.
Right? It's a little bit badass. Means that I'm showing up. I'm ready to come here and get down to business with you.
Awesome. I love it. I love it. Well, before we wrap up, one final question I love asking every guest is, we've talked about a lot of great things and there've been some very insightful things that you've mentioned, if, you were talking to someone and saying like, hey, if you're going to listen to this episode, hey, here are two key takeaways that I really want you to remember. What would those two key takeaways be?
Well, related to the divorce money guide, I would say the opportunity for someone going through the process of divorce to take control over that financial process, but have a helping hand with it is so important. Part of the reason that it was created was to help people feel better about what was going on money-wise in their divorce because it's complicated, because it's scary, because they have a lot of concerns about where they'll end up financially. Being able to help them at least feel better and get some control was super important. And so that's one takeaway I certainly want people to have. But the second is when you have a fantastic idea, just execute on it. Talk to people, gather information, but then go for it. Set yourself up for success, like I did by using Asana to help me, track what I was doing. Nike got it right. Just do it.
Awesome. I love it. Well, Tracy, thank you so much for coming on and being an amazing guest and telling us a lot more about the Divorce Money Guide. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great talking to you.
If you're looking for ideas on how to manage and grow a profitable law firm, this Facebook group is perfect for you because every week we are featuring conversations with successful lawyers and businesses related to law firms on tips, ideas, and technology that are helping many people grow and manage a profitable law firm. So if you're looking for great tips and ideas, you definitely want to click the link below so you can join the conversation and be part of the Law Firms and Finance Facebook group.